Madam Chair, that's a really good suggestion given the nature of this issue. So we'll definitely put that into action.
And it just helps us, not to work in silos, to work together for a better resolution, for all of our constituencies, the licensees, license holder, and the folks we're representing. So I think that would be a nice thing to institute.
Absolutely. I couldn't agree more.
Yeah, great. Don't see any other questions at this time. We'll see if there's any public comment on this issue and ask you to come forward. Welcome.
That's on. Good morning, Chair and members and Department and Bureau. My name is Jerry Desmond Jr., and I'm here on behalf of the Cemetery and Mortuary Association of California, or CMAC. The Cemetery and Mortuary Association of California was formed in 1931 with the belief that ethical memorial properties could serve the consumers and protect the industry as well. And we sponsored the Cemetery Act back in 1939 that the Bureau Chief referenced. Today we are comprised of 150 different cemetery properties, many of which have mortuaries of all sorts, fraternal, religious, for-profit and non-profit, and we support the Cemetery Act. And you can imagine from that that our industry is in support of the charter of the Bureau and its activities and its efforts to protect consumers. Those include both the testing and licensure for licensure, the inspections that take place at our cemetery properties, the enforcement that occurs and is being described, as well as the resolution of consumer complaints. We have looked at the issue paper prepared and have listened to the responses and the dialogue and the efforts that will take place, and we look forward to working with both the Bureau and the advisory committee process and the committees as you develop solutions to the issues that are being identified. So we want to express our support for the structure and the continuation of the Bureau as we move forward to protect consumers.
Thank you very much. Thank you. Welcome.
Hello.
Yep.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Thank you. My name is Sharon Ponciano, and I'm here as a new board member of the Funeral Consumers Alliance of Northern California. And I don't have an official statement from the group, but I feel personally that I wanted to be here to say that funerals in support of the Bureau, because having attended several of their meetings throughout the year, I really appreciate the conscientious and professional manner in which they proceed. And funerals, after all, are a transaction in which the consumer is uniquely vulnerable. Most families, or many at the very least, don't know their rights about funerals. And funeral buying has the potential to be one of the most expensive purchases a family makes. And with little information and almost no bargaining power, they often have to bear up under grief and a tight timeline. So I think the Bureau's work is very important in protecting all consumers.
Yeah. Thank you.
Thank you.
Well, thank you very much. Appreciate the report, and things seem to be going extremely well, and I think if we just work on some of the issues that we were raised, if you're able to get back to Assemblymember Wood with that information and show us if you're really, I'd like that feedback on the process and see something that's formalized, then it looks really good to me at this point. Thank you.
Absolutely. Thank you again for the opportunity to be here, and we will definitely follow up with the information that you're looking for.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you very much. All right, we'll move on now to our Board of Barbering and Cosmetology. It's always interesting how all these boards intersect in our lives. Welcome, Ms. Eggman. And we're counting on you, Cosmetology, to liven things up here. It's been a little sleepy. The bagels have definitely settled in, and everyone's tired. Yes. Well, thank you so much. I'm going to ask you to introduce yourselves, if that's okay, and then we will get started with your response. Thank you.
Hey, good morning. Good morning, Madam Chair Bonilla and distinguished members of the committee. My name is Dr. Carrie Williams. I am the current president of the Board of Barbering and Cosmetology. Thank you so much for this opportunity to come before you and discuss the board. I'd like to introduce our Vice President, Mr. Richard Hedges, as well as our Executive Officer, Ms. Christy Underwood. We, of course, are the Board of Barbering and Cosmetology, and our board is focused on consumer protection and beauty and barbering services. Often, people do not understand the risks involved in receiving beauty and barbering services. As a trichologist, which is a specialist in the scientific study of hair and scalp disorders, as well as a licensed barber, I see what harm can occur when someone is not properly trained or not following appropriate health and safety regulations. As an example, we have seen serious infections caused by unclean foot spas and skin burns caused by inappropriate skin care services. We firmly believe that all individuals that provide beauty and barbering services to California consumers must continue to obtain approved training, pass the board's licensing examinations, become licensed, and comply with our regulations. Here is a brief overview of our board. By licensed population, we are one of the largest regulatory boards in the state, and not surprisingly, we are the largest barbering and cosmetology board in the country. Our board issues licenses to cosmetologists, barbers, manicurists, estheticians, electrologists, as well as licensing all the salons where services are performed. We also approve and monitor all beauty and barbering colleges. We have over 577,000 active licensees. On an average annual basis, we receive 50,000 applications, issue 30,000 new licenses, administer 29,000 written examinations, and 34,000 practical examinations. Those examinations are conducted Monday through Friday. Upon successful completion of our licensing exam, an applicant receives their license the same day, allowing them to begin working immediately. We receive 3,200 complaints regarding health and safety concerns and or unlicensed activity, and we issue 16,000 citations. Since the board's last sunset review, we have made some significant improvements. The board has made reaching out to its limited English-speaking population a priority and has translated most of its documents into Spanish, Vietnamese, and Korean. In 2014, the board did targeted outreach to the Vietnamese community. We have added a quick hits page on the board's website for all Vietnamese publications. We held 2 town hall meetings with Vietnamese licensees, one in Sacramento and one in Westminster. We held an open house in Sacramento for licensees to obtain information and allow licensees to meet their inspectors. Our next goal will be to provide the same type of targeted outreach to our Spanish-speaking licensees, and we hope to have that completed by the end of 2015. Another significant area of improvement is the work we have completed in our disciplinary review committee. For that, I will ask Mr. Richard Hedges to provide a brief overview of our accomplishments.
Thank you.
Good morning, Chair Bonilla and committee members. Just checking to make sure my microphone's on, so you hear me well. Thank you for this opportunity. I thought your comment was interesting on livening things up. We have some of the most creative people that are licensed in this state within our industry, and we're very proud of most of them. My name is Richard Hedges, and I'm a public member. I reside in San Mateo, and our board receives very high volumes of citations, we hear appeals from these citations, and these appeals are heard by our board's standing disciplinary review committee. They are informal hearings, and the committee is comprised of board members. Currently, we have a majority of the people on the board that are industry members. I am a public member, and I attend almost all of the DRC hearings. They are informal, and the committee is comprised of board members. The committee meets every month, at least 3, in the past, at least 3 days. However, the workload has been a concern in the past sunset reviews, as licensees were waiting months to have their appeals heard. I am pleased to tell you that the members of the Disciplinary Review Committee and our staff have worked tirelessly over the last year or so to reduce this wait time. At this time last year, the board had 1,900 cases waiting to be heard, and some of them have been waiting for approximately 9 months. We now have less than 900 cases. Now, you might ask how this could happen in such a short time. Well, we added extra days. We're now doing at least 4 days a month, and we reviewed written cases in special meetings. I just wanted to tell you from personal note, yesterday in one of our hearings, we were reviewing cases in late December of 2014 and early January. And I don't know, there's probably not many other boards with our kind of volume that could hear cases that early. I would like to briefly highlight another area that we've worked tremendously on and in our inspection programs. This item will be discussed in detail in our response and the questions posed by the staff. However, I wanted to highlight the work we have done to improve this process. The board recognized that this is an area of concern in prior sunsets, and this would be our inspections. We have provided additional training to our inspectors, such as diversity training and tactical communication training. In addition, we have held 2 mandatory staff meetings with all inspectors in which training was provided on consistency in inspections. Our focus is on quality inspections and not quantity of inspections. I personally took an interest in what was happening with our inspectors, and I've done many ride-alongs. I've been riding along at least once and sometimes twice a month for over the last year, and I've consistently, since I've been on a board, been doing ride-alongs. I think it is important because the inspectors know that you're interested. They'll also discuss some of the problems they have with you, and you begin to see their point of view. And I will tell you that I've been in some situations with those inspectors that are very stressful. I was asked to go by one inspector on a directed she'd had for a long time because she was fearful of going to the shop. When we entered the shop, everybody in the shop, including the customers, ran. There were 2 children left there by themselves who were very frightened. We don't know what was going on in that shop, but we assume it was other than hair care. I attended another ride-along in San Carlos, California, where we went on a directed inspection from a mother who thought the salon was too dirty for her child to have services in. When we walked through the door, the owner, a very tall woman, larger than me, approached the inspector, not in a threatening way, but in a violent way. I stepped between them and asked the inspector to leave. We got her calmed down, and then we left and did not inspect. But I could see by looking around the room that this particular complaint was accurate. We then sent somebody else back. I did not go on that ride-along with other personnel.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
So our last significant change that we would like to note is that our board was one of the first boards to adopt the new Breeze system. While we understand the issues that have been brought up with the new system's implementation, we are pleased to say that the system is working well for us and has reduced processing times for many of our business processes. One of our most significant improvements is within our licensing unit. We are currently operating without any backlog, and in fact, processing applications quicker than this board ever has. In addition, we receive an average of 1,000 online transactions a month, which has eliminated manual processes. So while we understand early implementation of Breeze had issues, our staff has been able to adapt and make changes to utilize the system to improve our processes. The board works closely with the Department of Consumer Affairs on the implementation of Breeze and cohesively works with the department on many day-to-day processes. For example, our board utilizes the department's call center. In fiscal year 2013-2014, the call center handled over 100,000 calls on behalf of the board and mailed 6,000 items of correspondence. The board also relies on the department for all of its information technology, including webcasting of all of our board meetings, website development, and database support. The department also provides support to the board on budgets, contracts, human resources, and legal counsel. We consider services provided to us by the department as critical and sufficient, and we are happy with our working relationship. At this point, we will briefly address some of the issues that have been presented in the board's background paper. The first issue is to allow students to take the written portion of the examination prior to completion of school, which is issue number 4 in the background paper. Currently, applicants must take and pass both a written and practical examination. The board sees higher failure rate on the written examination. One explanation is that students begin school by taking theory classes, but are not tested until completion of their school hours, which is 10 to 12 months later. This lapse in time between being taught the information until testing could be why we see a lower pass rate on the written examination. Allowing early testing would simply allow the students to be tested on curriculum after it has been taught. 9 other states have adopted this process and have noted higher pass rates because the students are able to test upon completion of learning the material. There will be a fiscal impact should this change be implemented, which is believed to be a minimum of $100,000 for the additional technical changes to the database. The board does set the curriculum for all licensing courses in regulation and believes the curriculum requirements are sufficient. Each school must have its curriculum approved by the board. However, once a school is approved, the board's oversight is limited to oversight of services offered to consumers and health and safety regulations. We do believe that the current curriculum is sufficient. However, if the board had sole oversight over its schools as opposed to sharing oversight with the Bureau for Private Post-Secondary Education, the board could ensure curriculum standards are consistent across all instructional programs. Having sole oversight would allow us the ability to inspect student records, ensuring that students are being taught the approved curriculum and are not just being taught how to pass the examination, and in worst case, purchasing their hours without even attending school. This is addressed further under issue number 5 in the board's background paper.
The next issue is the board's inspection program. As mentioned previously, there have already been improvements made in the program. Additional training has been provided in technical communication, diversity, and the inspection process. In addition, the board is in communication with the department on development of more specialized training specifically for inspectors. We do believe that there are deficiencies in the inspection program, such as the board only has 22 positions to inspect over 50,000 establishments with over 500,000 licensees. These establishments range from size of 1 operator to over 30. An inspector could take 30 minutes to 2 hours, and I've actually been on inspections when it took 3 hours. The board is required to inspect the new establishment within 90 days of licensing. And we cannot meet this requirement. The board has been pursuing budget change proposals to increase the inspector staffing, but we have been unsuccessful. However, we will continue to pursue this through the budget process. Not having enough inspectors does propose a risk to consumers. And actually, this isn't what I've written, but when we had the problem with the foot spas, I actually had older people in my neighborhood ask me to have house meetings with them. They were very frightened. And I think it just started coming home to people the kinds of communicable diseases and infections you can get in a salon if the work isn't done properly. Mm-hmm. The board tracks the DRC complaints against inspectors and addresses these complaints immediately. And I will tell you that in the DRC hearings, when we hear someone complain about an inspector, we insist that they take a complaint form with them and fill it out. We take this very seriously. Oftentimes when we hear complaints, it's an owner who's been told something by a stylist or by a manicurist, and neither I was present or they were present or any of the other board members, so we want them to fill it out because we want to know the truth after the investigation is done. The board does face the challenge of language access in the field. Due to the fact that our inspectors cover such large territories, they encounter all cultural backgrounds. To address this issue, the board has taken steps to translate commonly used board documents. For example, we have translated inspections report into Vietnamese so that the Vietnamese-speaking licensees can understand the violations that have been found. We also advise licensees to contact our office so that an interpreter can assist them in understanding the inspections process and any citation that may be received. We are committed to ongoing monitoring of the inspection program and to continue to make our improvements wherever necessary. And just to let you know, when we have the DRC hearings, at the first stage, people are advised to bring their own interpreter. That doesn't always happen. And sometimes the interpreters are also limited in their language abilities, but we ask people in the audience to help. They often do. And the other issue is if we believe, and we're very careful with this, that people do not understand their rights, then we reschedule them so that they can come back and bring someone with them that really can translate for them. And I think you know that at that level, with somewhere in the neighborhood of 65 to 75 people scheduled, with about anywhere from 40 to 60% showing up, with as many as maybe 20 different languages, we could not have interpreters that we pay $200 per person there waiting. So at the early stages, we have to rely on them to bring the interpreter. We're also advising licensees to contact our office, and we said that, and we will give them help with interpretation. Our next issue is the creation of a freelance certificate. Currently, licensees can only provide services in a licensed establishment. The idea of a freelance certificate is to allow licensees, if certified by the board, to provide services outside the establishment. The board would do this by requiring additional application and potentially a background clearance that will certify individuals to practice in places such as churches or weddings, office buildings, and private homes. The board would require that a licensee performing services outside of the establishment provide a customer notice to anyone who receives services. The notice would include information on how to file a complaint with the board. While freelance work outside a salon setting is common in the industry today, licensees are subject to substantial fines for working outside of the licensed establishment. The board believes that with proper certification, this practice can be done to provide consumers with greater access to service while knowing that the individual has met the requirements of the board. And just a personal note, as someone who supplied those services for some of the elder people in my family in nursing homes through imprest funds left at the nursing home, that many nursing homes don't provide those services. To allow someone to legally go in and continue to service a person who has gone to them for years would be invaluable to that person. And also, a large amount of transportation budget is for Ready Wheels or paratransit, and many of these trips are for disabled people to get haircut services. Those very expensive trips could be eliminated by this certification. Those are just my own personal notes and observations. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Hedges. So the next issue is increased language access, number 15 on the background paper. As mentioned previously, we have taken many steps in improving language access. However, we understand there is always more to do. When the board has vacancies and we publicly post announcements, we encourage Vietnamese and Spanish-speaking candidates to apply for employment with the board. While Spanish and Vietnamese are not the only areas where language access can be improved, they do make up a large number of licensees. We are hoping to continue outreach to these communities as we do believe that communicating directly in forms such as town hall meetings can be very effective. Finally, issue number 16, which is increased licensee and consumer safety. There are times when the board hears of products that could be harmful not only to consumers, but also to licensees. The board conducts research when necessary and provides information on its website. The website is promoted through social media as well as by inspectors in the field. The board also attends licensee trade shows to further promote safety to its licensees. This concludes our report, and again, we would like to thank the committee and their staff for this opportunity. We will provide written responses to all issues raised in the background paper, and we look forward to working with you all to improve consumer safety. We are happy to respond to any questions. Thank you.
Questions from committee members? Yes, Assemblymember Baker.
Thank you. I thank you for a very good presentation. Just on your last point regarding languages, you had mentioned that a large number of licensees speak Vietnamese and Spanish. Can you just give a potential proportion or just rough figures that you might have on that?
Yes.
We don't actually collect the data, so we don't have an actual number. So it's mostly from exams that we provide. But we do, in other studies that have been done, not by our board, we are looking at about 95% of our manicurists in the state are Vietnamese speaking, and that's about there's over 100,000 licensed manicurists. That's one example.
Got it. And this is for Mr. Hedges. You mentioned your ride-alongs that you do.
Yes.
I applaud you for that. Do you have a sense of how either frequent or prevalent other board members may make that type of participation in the inspection process?
Well, I don't track the board members,
Right.
but I encourage them, and many have. And interestingly, Frank Lloyd, when he was on the board, after he did a few ride-alongs, changed his opinion a great deal. He was really very sort of didn't like regulation very well. And when he got to know the inspectors, got to see the process, he really understood and became a much better board member, I thought.
Good. Thank you.
And just to add, I've done ride-alongs, and we have active members who participate in our DRC committee hearings, and so we oftentimes really encourage board members to go on ride-alongs so that when we're in the hearings and we're receiving testimony from our appellants, that we also understand the reports that the inspectors are writing for us.
Do you have any sense of what might either create an incentive or more encouragement for board members to do that at some level of participation? Is it usually just a scheduling issue, or
It's
where?
usually scheduling.
Yeah.
If I could insert, Ms. Williams has a very nice salon. She does well there. She gives up a lot of income to do this. That's part of the issue.
Yeah, sure.
We are paid $100 a day, as I'm sure you're aware, and a good stylist, that's peanuts.
Good. Well done. Thank you.
Thank you.
Yes, Mr. Block, Senator Block.
Thank you, Madam Chair. You mentioned the different languages spoken by those who are under your supervision. The passage rate for testing for those Spanish language speakers is lower somewhat than English language. How much lower is it? Do you have?
It's considerably lower on the Spanish side, not on the Vietnamese side, but on Spanish, it's definitely lower.
And what, if anything, are you doing to try to change that?
What we have done is when we first started seeing the passage rate go down, we use a national exam. And so we talked to our national exam vendor and had them reevaluate the translation process that they used. They did believe that the translation that they did use was accurate. So then we went out to our schools and we talked to our schools to see what they thought would be the issues and what can we do to try to improve the passage rates. And so we did a survey and we allowed schools to respond, and we did get a lot of responses that felt their students that were taking the Spanish exam were more prone to speak conversational Spanish, and the exams are translated into very proper Spanish. And so one of the things that we've done is we're trying to make that known. We don't want people to think that it's conversational Spanish on an examination. So we've added that information to our website, and we've let our schools know that. And that's one of the things we're hoping to do in 2015 is to get out and talk to the schools about the Spanish specifically. They do use Spanish textbooks, but we found that they will use both Spanish and English while teaching. So hopefully in 2015 we're out there more often and talking to some of our Spanish-speaking students to get that up.
So what is the gap right now in English-speaking passage rate versus Spanish-speaking passage rate?
For our largest license type, which is cosmetology, the English is around 60 to 70% passage, and the Spanish is about 35%.
And what is your goal for Spanish speakers to get by what year up to parity or close to it? Do you have any goals?
No, we don't have any goals. We are seeing it come up now. It was about 5% lower last year, but we shouldn't have a 35% pass rate. We would like to see that get up into the 60%. So hopefully with some outreach, whether it's a Spanish speaking taking an English exam, we're finding that they are more successful in that route. So that's an option, but we would hope to get the Spanish exams up into the 60% rate.
And we allow translators at the exam.
Yeah, and we do, for the practical exam, we allow them to bring in a translator. So there is a higher pass rate on that.